Yeah, greetings. Day 8, Principle 8 of the Sector 39 Permaculture Design course. And obviously, we're framing each day, sort of using as a reference point each one of David's 12 principles. I think it finds it, to me, it makes it memorable and it gives it this a shape of to your thinking, to your process. So by day 8, yesterday, yesterday, previous principle, we thought about patterns, moving from patterns to detail. Okay, we're in a different design phase. We're trying to think about how do we impose design on the world in a way that is functional. In permaculture, we obviously we're designing for function, and we're trying to choose and work with elements that support and many different functions. So we want elements that perform multiple functions, and we're going to look and understand the key function of the design and make sure that we have many elements within that design that support that key function, because that's why we're doing it. That's the most important thing. Um, Integrate rather than segregate. It, link things together. How do we create overlaps and joins? The more interconnections that are in a system, the stronger it becomes. The more interconnections are in a system, the more efficient it becomes, potentially. Um, in that it has the ability perhaps to harvest every drop of sunlight or hold on to every bit of organic matter for as long as possible as we build up complexity and interconnections. How do we design, though? How do we create interconnected systems? That's an interesting thing to think about. And again, I think that's where this idea about choosing elements that perform multiple functions and supporting key functions with multiple elements, that kind of thinking is how we start to shape things together in a way in which we do start, emulating the natural world and creating much more complex patterns. So I like the icon, a kind of a mandala uh, pattern picture. Could be a flower. It looks very floral, very natural. I've heard it said that maybe it looks like a group of people maybe looking down symbolically as their arms or their heads as they sit in a circle and discuss an idea. I don't know. That's a bit abstract maybe, but it's about individual parts coming together to create a whole that is more functional, more stronger, more resilient than any one of its individual parts. Many hands make light work. Many hands make light work. I mean, that's a classic saying um, about how obviously large tasks that would destroy individuals can be accomplished in short spaces of time with many people. And this is actually a very, again, really critical idea within permaculture is if you've got a really good plan. So okay, so you have many hands. I've got 100 people here to help. Actually, that's a challenge. Is to know how to direct the flow of all of that energy and think how many tools you need, and you actually need to do a lot of planning to think about how to harvest and make the most of the energy of, many hands of a large group of people. But with permaculture design, we've anticipated these things and broken it down into steps, and created um, a design process so that when those 100 hands turn up, we know what to do with them because we thought of, we've anticipated that. So there's ideas within permaculture, sort of intense work periods, perma blitzes. Again, people, I've heard them called, or intensive. We used to, in our old days in the housing cooperatives, we'd have work weekends, and we spend weeks and months planning the right kinds of tasks that many people could then participate in. So lots of planning, you can get a lot of work done in a short space of time. Um, Integrate rather than segregate. Many hands make light work. That all of these imply people working together, and perhaps that's why I like that more humanistic interpretation of the icon. Is this is the trade unions? This is cooperation. I'm committed to cooperation, and I think that cooperation is hard, written right the way through, hardwired through nature. The design of nature seems to be about cooperation, about interconnections, mutually beneficial relationships. All of these things are things you need to be holding in your mind as you approach permaculture design. You're building relationships. You're looking for ways in which things are either dynamically counterbalancing each other or perhaps contributing to each other. We're thinking how the nutrient flows that might come out of one system need to go into the next system. We don't want waste. This is how we eliminate waste, is through design. So we might have wells and ponds and water tanks, but what happens when they're full? Where does that surplus go? We can design and interpret all of these things by thinking in an interconnected way. So by correct placement of plants, animals, earthworks, and other infrastructure, it's possible to develop a higher degree of integration and self-regulation without the need for constant human input. So good design takes out the work, that routine, boring bit. If your chickens now can access their food or in a food foraging system where they don't need you to come and feed them, that's one less job for you to do. For example, okay, we go. The scratching of poultry under forage forests can be used to harvest litter and regulate pests. So we can integrate the function of what's happening in a woodland system with the function of how chickens like to forage and feed. We can integrate those two together, be it for a day or a week or a month or whatever's appropriate for our design objective. But then we can, if you like, get two sets of different benefits. We get the eggs from the chicken, and we get the regulation of potential pests in the forest system. Herbaceous and woody weed species in animal pasture systems often contribute to soil improvement, biodiversity, medicinal, and other special uses. Appropriate, rationally grazed livestock can often control these weedy species without eliminating them and their values completely. So this is an example where we're being encouraged to value a pasture system with it contains a wide variety of plants. And actually, many of these other, which you might say is weed species, often contain nutrients. Animals self-medicate. They know what to. They crave certain flavors and things when intuitively when perhaps they need them. By developing an awareness of the importance of relationships in the design of a self-reliant system, two statements in permaculture literature and teaching have been central. Each element performs many functions, and each important function is supported by many elements. So I hope we've brought that to life. That's such an important statement there, and something which you want to kind of keep in mind. So we create integrated systems by bringing elements together that have the ability to perform multiple functions, and we take some time to actually understand what all of the functions of that element might be by observation, by studying it. Rather than just focusing on the egg, let's think about the behavior of the whole chicken and thinking about how we can integrate that or usefully into systems that we're designing and building, for example. Okay, so again, this is just our warm up. So here I've chosen a picture for you for this one, which I like particularly. It's not one of mine. I just found it on the internet, and it struck me of. Again, I'm guessing. I'm interpreting. I don't know. It's a traditional African settlement. I would imagine that these people are semi-nomadic. That they would look. They're growing crops. But if I get out of the way, we can see in the middle of their compound, there's a space for cattle. So these would be probably nomadic pastoralists, kind of people you see in South Sudan even. They've built their village out of the local available resources, grasses and sticks. They've built structures obeying Principle 5 out of valuing local and natural resources. And they've done it in a way in which Principle 6, those will just, when left, will just compost and recycle and return to the soil again. So this is a sustainable settlement. These people are probably semi-nomadic, shift around, move around with their cattle, probably following the grasses at different seasons. So the cattle would be one of the primary functions of their sort of economic survival, if you like, is the safety and and the centrality of the cattle. So the danger, perhaps, I'm just trying to get out of the way. Risk factors might be obviously is much more at night, predatory animals and so forth. So by clustering the settlements together, we've created a safe corral area in the middle for the cattle. And we've got every family clustered around so that everyone can hear and tuned in, hear the sound of the cows and know that they're safe. Each family group is also clustered together. Look, they've got their individuality, they've got their privacy. Each little pattern of each settlement that's been created is unique, reflecting the needs and priorities of the people within it. But clustered together, it creates one single functional element. We've got our homestead, we've got community, we've got ability to take care of children, take care of sick people, keep whoever needs caring. We can keep an eye on our cattle. Their manure is there for harvesting, for compost, and for fuel. I just thought it was a wonderful illustration of integration. Imagine each one of those settlements, 200 yards away from each other, spread all over the place, and you lose all of that functionality. And I also perhaps, it's interesting to me to think, because it's obviously outside of my own culture, but is to have a semi-permanent settlement. I quite like this. An interesting idea to me is that it looks to me like quite a lot of work, a few weeks' work to harvest and process all of that grass, but then maybe something that would last for, I don't know, a season or two, or 6 or 12 months. I have no idea. But then having the opportunity to, reinvent, recast, the shape of your community each time you rebuild it. Sort of different neighbours, or I don't know. Interesting. Anyway, integrate rather than segregate. This is so core to what we're trying to get over to you. It's almost like the whole of the first week really is a warm up. Second week we're talking about patterns to detail. See the overarching pattern, and then we don't get bogged down because there's always so much potential detail to look at. Keep your eye on the horizon. Are we going in the right direction? Are we moving towards the function that we want to support? And can we keep placing elements into our pattern to support that key function? And as we start to think about placing those elements, how can we build functional relationships between them so that they actually create some kind of synergistic advantage, or they contribute, contribution to the functioning of the system. So here, the simple example perhaps is the kraling of the cattle. They are safe. The whole community has a collective ownership and protectorship over those animals, and it's all their long-term economic, sort of, that's their savings. That's their savings bank. These people don't have bank accounts, I'm guessing. We have mobile money now, but think about that. That's their real tangible asset. And so, of course, placing that at the center of the community means that it's valued and guarded, and everything else sits around that core function. And there's many other functions, obviously housing individual families, and and on we go. So I'm not proposing these people have used permaculture design per se, but what I am actually proposing is trial and error, observe and interact. They actually are using permaculture design, but they don't need to be taught it because it's embedded within their culture already. And I think this is something, again, perhaps I digress slightly, but it's a very interesting thing to think about, is it's us first world people that need to be taught these things, because people who still live in a way in which they're constantly interacting with the natural world know these things intuitively. Anyway, there you go. Welcome to Principle 8, and welcome to integrate rather than segregate.